Now, Allison, you became the president of the ALA in 2024, but you've been part of the organization since 2019. You served in positions of vice president, the treasurer, and a board member. So tell us a little bit about your experience with Alberta Lymphedema Association and what are your goals for the organization?
Sure. I will touch on some of that briefly in our presentation as well, but the association was started back in 2003. And so by the time I joined in 2019, they'd already accomplished a lot. And it was just a group of very, very passionate people who were dedicated to making change. We are all volunteers, as we were talking about earlier. We're all volunteers and we all are just here because we want to be and we want to make things better. That is what really got me attached to it. And so that's why I'm still here. And in terms of our goals for the association, we are there to address the general lack of awareness about lymphedema. So in the general public, the government, the medical field, but most importantly, those who might be at risk of it or suffering from it. So we really want to be a resource that people can turn to so that they know they're not alone. And we also just want that information to be more known and more accessible in general as well, not only through us. So hopefully with some of what we'll share today in our presentation, the importance of that and why it matters to us will become clear.
Excellent. And Robin, you joined the Alberta Lymphedema Association in 2023 as a board member, and congratulations, you were recently voted to vice president.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, you are a registered massage therapist, and you specialize in lymphatic drainage, as well as a number of other massage therapy modalities. And you are an instructor at the Chickley Health Institute. Um, so, what was your driving force for joining the ALA as a board member?
Yeah, so I've been practicing here in the city of Calgary for over 20 years, and I taught a lot massage programs and so on for 12 years, and learning and going through all the trials and tribulations with patients and with colleagues, the necessity for advocacy and for education is really big when it comes to understanding the lymphatic system and lymphedema. So it was a natural transition to take it that next step and start working with the Alberta Lymphedema Association. And I'm been very, very happy to um, sort of be at a different capacity working with the association. So yeah, it sort of needed that little extra push. And I'm very, very excited that I get to be not only a medical professional working with lymphedema, but then also with the advocacy with the association. So
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so I am going to let you guys take over. I'm going to mute my microphone. I'm going to turn off my camera, and I'm going to let you guys take the stage.
Great. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Welcome everyone to our presentation, Learning About Lymphedema. It is actually a very special time for us to be presenting this information. We're always privileged to be doing so, but it is Lymphedema Awareness Month in March, and this Thursday is World Lymphedema Day. So now if you see anyone wearing teal or you see the Calgary Tower lit up teal on Thursday, you will know why and you'll know a little bit about it. So congratulations and thank you for being here. Robin obviously is going to be doing most of the talking today. As you just heard, she is incredibly qualified, but I will start us off with a little bit of information about us. First, acknowledging, yes, that some of the slides within this presentation have been adapted from slides created by the Canadian Lymphedema Framework. I'll give a little blurb about them later, just in case, because they are a great resource as well. So just something to be aware of. All right, so this is what we're going to cover today. A brief synopsis of who we are. Then we're going to go into the lymphatic system, and lymphedema, including signs and symptoms of lymphedema, ways to reduce risk, diagnosis and treatment. And then finally, we will point you to some other resources in case you would like further information. Okay, so starting off with who are we? Some of you on the call are familiar with us. As I mentioned, we were started in 2003. to address the general lack of awareness about lymphedema across the board. You might hear us call the ALA or ALA. I usually call us ALA. So that's if I say ALA, that's who I'm talking about, is us. Okay. So we are volunteer run, as I mentioned. We operate from the patient perspective. So we are not giving medical advice. We are providing resources, compiling resources. We can connect people with those who can provide them with medical advice. But we're really there to just support patients in whatever they need in order to access what they need to feel better. So that's where we come in. Our big focuses are on education and awareness. So having people know what lymphedema is, what resources are available. When we were started, actually our prior president and one of the founders, she had lymphedema a while after breast cancer and actually ended up needing to search far and wide to find out what she had, which if any of you have had similar circumstances within the medical system, which I'm sure many of you have, where you just can't get the answers that you're looking for and you're going around in circles, it's incredibly frustrating and isolating. So that was kind of the inspiration for why we started and why we are still here, because as things improve over time, there still is that general lack of awareness. So to solidify that, here's just some quick facts to set the stage for why what we're talking about here is important. Physicians spend less than a week on the lymphatic system in their entire time in medical school, unless they specialize in something where they cover that more. And saying less than a week is very generous. In most cases, it's like half a day. So there's not a lot of knowledge in like your general physician about this, and that's not their fault, but that is the reality. And it's not an incredibly rare thing either. So up to 250 million people worldwide have lymphedema, which is more than a lot of well-known conditions and diseases. So why isn't it more talked about, right? And then the next point as well goes with that. 1 in 5 women who survive breast cancer will develop lymphedema. And I think the last statistic I looked at was that like 1 in 8 women in Canada will develop some sort of breast cancer in their lifetime. So again, it is, and that's just one subset of lymphedema patients. And then most of those afflicted go misdiagnosed for long periods of time. And the reason that that's important is on the next slide, actually, the second point there. So it is a progressive condition. So Robin's going to go into what it is and what it looks like and how it develops, but it's progressive. So it gets worse over time. So the longer that a patient goes without diagnosis and treatment, the worse their condition becomes. And then it's not reversible, right? So it's really important that people get in, figure out what they have and start managing it. And once people do get a diagnosis, and a lot of times people similar to our founder have to advocate for themselves in order to get that diagnosis, then they don't know where to go from there, right? So maybe their physician doesn't know where to send them, or there's just like a lot of information when they search on the internet. So that's why we really want people to be able to turn to us for help. Untreated lymphedema can result in a number of serious complications such as cellulitis and wounds. So this is something that should be important to everyone because a lot of lymphedema patients end up doing ER visits, monthly ER visits because of these complications, because they haven't been diagnosed or they're not properly managing their condition. So this is a drain on our healthcare system, obviously. Where if they had access to the proper treatment and diagnosis methods, then this would be less of an issue. And then the final point there, the wait list for primary and non-cancer lymphedema patients to receive publicly funded care in Calgary is currently over 2 years long. They did recently get another part-time staff there, so hopefully we see that reduce over time, but that still is a huge amount of time if we're talking about someone whose condition is progressively getting worse as they wait for that. There are privately available options. So you can go and see a certified lymphedema therapist, which Robin will share the definition of shortly. But those are not typically covered by insurance plans. They usually come under, you know, things like massage or occupational therapy. So if you've had insurance plans that cover those things, you know that typically it's not a huge amount of coverage. So all that to say, obviously everyone's different, but the private treatment options are quite cost prohibitive. So with that, that kind of sets the stage for why we're here. So I'll pass it off to Robin to tell you what we're actually talking about here.
Thank you, Allison. Yeah, no, so the lymphatic system is normally one of those systems that people only care about once it's unhappy, right? So if you've never heard of the lymphatic system or you don't have a doctor who specializes in it, congratulations. It means normally you have a very happy lymphatic system, and most people don't care until it gets mad. So in massage therapy school, you know, we get half a day on it. It's not a system that is well trained on unless you decide to specialize in this. So it's one of those things that there's the private and there's the public approach when it comes to working and for treatment. And that's one of the things that we're constantly trying to work on is figuring out how we can work together. So most people know about the cardiovascular system, and on this call, I don't know what everybody's background is. So if I end up sort of making this very fun layman way, it's how I teach my kids. All three of my children who are under 15 understand the lymphatic system, which means everybody can. So most people know about the cardiovascular system, right? Your heart pumps out oxygen, water, nutrients, gives it to all your cells, and your cells are very grateful, and that's how they live and survive. And then they give off their waste. Now, we used to, an antiquated thought process used to be that all the waste products went back into the veins and got pumped back to the heart, and the cycle of blood went on. It's actually been reevaluated in the last 10 to 15 years, and they now can show that between 90 to 99.98% of all the waste products every cell in your body makes up actually has to go through your lymphatic system first before it gets given back into the bloodstream. So in all your tissues around your body, you have all these little networks of vessels that collect your waste, carry it to some lymph nodes that are going to clean it and eventually return it back into your bloodstream. So the main reason you have your lymphatic system is to help keep a really healthy balance of all the fluids in your tissues. If we don't collect all that waste and excess water and so on that are in your tissues, you're going to be all puffy and swelling, and that's not a very good happiness either. So it's going to keep that fluid balance. It's going to help transport proteins. And when we say proteins, proteins actually have a lot to do with more of your blood plasma proteins, but anything that you also digest in the sense of fats get absorbed into your lymphatic system in your small intestine and then circulated to the rest of your body. But your lymphatic system is also your immune system. So its job is to also help fight off any kind of infection by any kind of bad pathogen that comes into your system. So whether it's bacteria, viruses, germs, parasites, whatever it is, your immune cells are traveling in your lymphatic system. So when your lymphatic system is really healthy and we can move the fluids that we need to move from all your tissues around and everything good, you don't have any swelling. And again, this is why most people don't know about the lymphatic system until, you know, one day they have this really big toe or, you know, their eye gets really, really swollen. And now all of a sudden we're hearing words like it might be your lymphatics. And people go, I've never heard of this system. You must be making it up. I bet you were on Google Doctor and that's how you discovered it. Well, no, you didn't care about it until things went wrong. So there are circumstances where your body cannot move the amount of fluid because you're making too much, or the system is physically broken and can't move that fluid. And so that's when you start getting tissue swelling. Okay. So lymphedema is a special kind of lymphatic issue. So lymphedema is a condition, and once it's established, it's sort of a lifelong condition by building up of that lymphatic fluid. So you're going to end up having swelling and problems of congestion around the body because we can't physically move the lymphatic fluid because the lymph system is broken. That's lymphedema. The lymphatic system is broken, therefore it can't move the fluid. So we categorize this in two ways. So one of the things I'll actually add really quick is that you can have regular swelling. That's called edema. If you sprain your ankle or you get a tooth pulled or you got hit in the eye with a volleyball, that's swelling and that's normal. That's edema. Edema and lymphedema are very different. Edema is swelling that happens because of injury or trauma or accumulation, but your body can move that fluid and recover it, and you heal and life goes on. Lymphedema is where the physical lymphatic system is incapable of moving the fluid because it's been damaged. So we look at that in two different ways. We have people who are born with an imperfect system, and we call that primary lymphedema. It means that they were born with it. So they have a faulty system, and there's lots of different ways that it's faulty. Maybe the vessels are too small, the vessels might be too big, the valves don't work. There's all these mechanical issues that just physically don't allow the system to move enough fluid. So that's, you're born with it, that's primary. Secondary means that sometime along the way you had a perfect system at birth and everything was good until something happened. There was a damage that was inflicted upon your lymphatic system, and there's dozens of reasons why that could be. It could be because you had cancer and you had lymph nodes removed. So now you're missing parts of your system, or you had radiation therapy and that damages your lymphatic vessels. Or maybe you had, a really bad accident, a motor vehicle accident, and the trauma from the seatbelt into your chest, or you had a leg amputation, or there's so many different reasons why your lymph system can be damaged throughout your life. So if you have a happy, healthy lymphatic system at birth, but there's trauma or something that damages it along the way, that's called secondary lymphedema. So we categorize this. We treat them both very similarly, but it's good to understand where it came from. So a lot of people, hear about lymphedema. They go and do the good old, search engine, look up what is lymphedema. Everybody has a minor panic attack because the pictures are never pretty. So the first thing everybody wants to know is, well, am I even at risk of developing lymphedema? So there's a lot of things. If you come in and you see me, I'm a certified lymphedema therapist and I work with swelling all the time, and somebody walks in, there's things I need to know, right? So the first thing is that, is there a family history? Because remember that first kind of lymphedema called primary? There is a genetic component that can be attributed to that. Not always, but we do tend to see that. So if you tell me that your mom had big legs and your Aunt Susie had big legs and, Nona from the old country, she had really big legs, then like maybe we're looking at primary. Maybe you have genetically a weaker system. It happens. So the next thing I want to know is, do you have any kind of history of, trauma to the skin, infections? Have you had bouts of cellulitis, which is an infection within the skin? And unfortunately, for people who have lymphedema, that is a very easily occurring kind of infection because our lymph system not only moves the fluid, but remember, it also is your immune system. So if it's not moving stuff really well, you're more prone to infections. I also want to know, have you had surgeries? Have you had lymph nodes removed? Have you had radiation? Those are almost, if you've had lymph nodes removed or radiation, you're ticking my lymphedema boxes really fast as a therapist. And so there's all these questions that we ask. And we sort of want to know, what is the chances that this is lymphedema, or is it just edema? And I'm hoping for you that it's just edema. But maybe you fall in the category of lymphedema and we catch it early. That would be good. So like I said, if you had radiation or an injury, how much damage did you have, a mole removed on your skin, or did you have a hysterectomy? Did you, roll your ankle, or did you break your femur? Those kinds of things will give me an idea as to what might be causing the swelling. Chronic venous diseases. So chronic venous, specifically chronic venous insufficiency, means that your veins are tired. And we see that. We see varicose veins, we see spider veins, and those are indications that the system is slow and sluggish and tired. And when your venous system is slow and sluggish, it actually creates a little bit more back pressure and causes more fluid to become stagnant in the limbs, which is even harder for your lymphatic system. So if you have that situation where your ankles are sore and they're swollen at the end of the day, But you go to bed and in the morning you wake up and they actually look pretty good. But by the end of the day, they're swollen and congested again. That tells me we've got some venous issues that are reoccurring. So they become chronic. And that can unfortunately lead into lymphedema. The last one, it's funny because when I first started doing lymphatic training, we never talked about bariatrics or if somebody was overweight or obese. But there has been a lot of research into how obesity, bariatric situations actually impact the amount of fluid that gets stuck and that can't be drained and moved as well. And they're actually starting to show that obesity and being overweight actually is becoming one of the top reasons why people are developing lymphedema. And it's just the amount of back pressure, the amount of fluid that is required to be moved, and the location of where the lymph nodes are placed, etc. It puts a lot of back pressure and a lot of stress on your lymphatics. So it's climbing. It's actually, I think, between first and second position right now for what's causing a lot of lymphedema in North America. So, you know, going back 15, 20 years, they didn't talk about it, but they're doing a lot more research into how those factors are impacting and affecting people with lymphedema. So the unfortunate reality is lymphedema is a lifelong condition. There's no magical surgery pill. I attend a lot of talks and a lot of conferences and get to listen to a lot of doctors. And unfortunately, they all still are saying the same. It can't be completely avoided. It can't be completely cured. However, we have really upped our game in how we manage and can deal with lymphedema, especially if we catch it early. So if we wait until everything's really, really big and really swollen and you're at your absolute worst, that's a lot of work. And for me, you know, I hate to say it, but that's good for my business, but I don't want it to be. I want to be catching people who have lymphedema at a very early stage. So it's good to know how to lower your risk. And I want to show you some of the signs and symptoms to look for, whether it's for yourself or your spouse or, you know, your cousin, you know, Elaine, who never listens to you. Those kinds of people, sometimes they need to hear it from someone else. So here's some signs and symptoms of what lymphedema looks like. So swelling can either be gradual or sudden. So if it's sudden, you have an injury, you have swelling, but the swelling doesn't seem to be really going away. It's stuck. And, you know, a lot of times doctors will try stuff like a diuretic pill to try and help move the fluid. The thing with lymphedema is it's not about the fluid. It's actually about the lymph system physically moving that fluid. So if your lymph system can't physically move the fluid, then, you know, it's not that you're retaining water, it's that the system to remove that water is not functional. So it's not just a water retention issue. So things that a lot of people will notice is they'll start to say that their clothing feels like it's not fitting. Like one arm can fit into the sweater, but the other one, they just can't get in. It's too tight. Why are all my sweaters feeling like they're not working for my right arm? What's up with that? Or they can't get their one shoe on. They used to be able to take their rings on and off, but they just are stuck. They're contemplating having to go get them cut off, the actual rings. So anytime we have people who start sharing, oh, my limb feels heavy. Water is heavy. We're like, oh, it can't be that bad. It's just swelling. Water is heavy. And when it sits in your tissues, the truth is it's actually not just water. It's all the waste products all your cells made. So your cells were getting that oxygen, nutrients, and water, and they were grateful. They took it on, and then they gave off their waste products. They gave off cell debris. They gave off fragmented like viruses. They gave off waste products. And if you're not removing that from your tissue, it's all just sitting there, and it's heavy. So patients will say, my one arm feels like, and even if from across the room, both arms look the same, they'll normally state, you know, my one arm, yeah, I can get my shirt on, that's great, but my arm feels like it's 10 pounds heavier. And it's because you can fit a lot of stuff in and around your cells without it showing on the outside. And that's a hard piece because you'll also start getting temperature differences. We will see the heat, but also it can cause compression on blood vessels and nerves. So people might also make, oh, my fingers are cold. or I have numbness in my fingers. So all those things start to tell us what's going on, and fluid sitting in your tissues is not a good idea. So they might notice that their skin feels really, really tight. And what happens over time is as the skin adapts to the swelling, and if it's not getting moved and it's stuck in the tissue, the skin will start to change. It'll actually start to thicken and develop what we call fibrosity. And so the worst stage of lymphedema we call elephantiasis. And the reason, not only because of the size of the limb, but the texture of the skin feels like elephant skin. So really rough, really, thick and coarse, and it can become very thick. And that's not something that's easy to remove. So again, if we can catch it where the skin's just feeling tight, I have a greater chance. Sometimes as the fluid sticks into the tissues, it's stuck, and again, that waste product, that extra fluid, is supposed to be trying to get through your lymphatic system, through your lymph nodes to get all the way back into your bloodstream, right above the heart here. And if it can't, the skin not only might thicken, but there's going to be some weak spots, and the lymph is just trying to get out of the limb. So there are times where we have something called lymphuria, which is where you start actually leaking lymphatic fluid out through these little ulcerations, these little blisters in your skin. And so that's really uncomfortable. It does not smell really good. It is a huge potential for infection. That's getting further on. But if you think of one limb or multiple limbs that are filling with fluid, and they're heavier and they're thick, and you can't put your clothes on, and you can't imagine how well that is now to move, right? Think of like how easy is it to be doing cooking or trying to drive, or if it's with your legs, how easy is that now to get in and out of the car or put pants on, doing stairs, trying to use the bathroom, all of these things, it just progresses and keeps building. And so again, if we can catch these things really early, we can prevent it from getting to this stage, right? We definitely don't want it to get to the worst case. Worst case is literally the worst case. You don't want that. So the hardest thing, to be honest, is to get lymphedema officially diagnosed, okay? You heard Allison talk a little bit about, there are not many medical professionals who have specialized in lymphatics. So I'm very lucky. I have colleagues whose family members have gone to medical school. And when they came out, I was really excited. I said, I've always wanted to ask a doctor, like, how much time did you actually get on the lymphatic system, right? And he looked at me and he said, I think I got 2 days in my first year. So unless I specialized in immunology or lymphatics, that was the extent. And I asked my GP, because he knows we're going to talk about lymph. That's just part of our relationship. And I said, dude, like, honestly, how much? And he goes, Robin, I think I've learned more from you about lymphatics than I did in medical school. So this is another reason why ALA, or the Alberta Lymphedema Association, does as much as we can to advocate and to educate patients and their families, because sometimes you have to bring the information. GPs are amazing at being triaged. You come in, you say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm noticing. I learned a little bit about lymphedema. I can't diagnose it, but it feels like lymphedema. It looks like lymphedema. Could you help me find somebody to diagnose if I have lymphedema? So this is the thing. A health professional, like a doctor, their job is to review that medical history, look at all the reasons why they think you might be swelling, and they're going to do a couple little tests. Myself as a lymphedema therapist, we can do Stemmer's tests and pitting tests, but having a doctor be able to say this is lymphedema now opens you up to being able to access more resources to manage this, because like we said, it's not something that's curable. It's something that now you have to manage for the rest of your life. So there are different ways of being diagnosed, and depending on what city you're in, who the resources are, that's something that is important, is to get through the steps of saying this is lymphedema, and then starting to figure out what your treatment plan is and how you're going to manage it. So Stemmer's test is where we pick up the skin on the back of the second finger, as well as it could be on the top of the second toe. So basically, if you can pick up the skin on the back of your finger, that's a good thing. So we call that a negative Stemmer's test. That means that you can easily pinch that skin, lift it off, and you don't have enough congestion or swelling or fibrosis, that thickening, to stop you picking up that skin. However, when you have somebody who has lymphedema, you cannot, it's too thick, and you try, and it's physically not possible. It's just too dense. It's like a thicker kind of texture. And same thing on the top of the foot. And so that's a positive Stemmer's test. It's not a guarantee that you have lymphedema, but it's a pretty positive sign that we're going in that direction. Pitting tests, there's pitting edema and there's lymphedema. And again, if you can press your finger into a swollen area and you take your finger, you hold it for 30 seconds, and you take your fingers out and you can still see the indent and it's there for a while, what that's telling you is you have long-standing congestion. You have long-standing edema, and it's most likely lymphedema, okay? So there's a reason why that fluid is stuck there. The tissue has all started to become really, thickened. It doesn't have the elasticity to bounce back like normal swelling will. So if you were to sprain your ankle, you try and push into it, you're not going to get your finger in because it's normally so swollen. But normally if you press in, you let go, there's no fingerprint. That's more of edema. So again, using these kinds of basic tests are a way to sort of direct you as to where your body is showing why it's swelling or what's going on. There's lots and lots of things that we can do in assessment-wise. There's, comparative photos, there's skin conditions, there's different kinds of tests that doctors will do depending on how it's presenting. So swelling is telling you that there's an imbalance somewhere, and we need to figure out why the fluid is not leaving, why it's not moving, and we need to work with that. So pain assessments, we do something called circumferential measurement taking. So we do measurements around your wrist on both sides to compare how big the limb is in different areas. There's looking at ABI, which is ankle brachial index, and I think it's now ABPI, which is ankle brachial peripheral index. That's just making sure that your blood vessels aren't thickening. We're not having like atherosclerosis or any kind of big issues with your movement of fluid in your extremities. So that's really important for us to know as well. So sometimes doctors will give you an actual stage or a grade, which sounds like you're back in school, but this is how we figure out where you fit in the lymphedema category. So we look at how the skin reacts to being touched, how the swelling's going down, if the tissue has changed. There's a lot of factors. So here are the stages of lymphedema. So stage 0 is before you really have a lot of swelling. So these are like really little subtle changes. You're starting to say, my arm feels a little heavy. I'm noticing that, it just feels awkward. It feels warm. But if I looked at the limb from across the room, I wouldn't say, oh, look, she's got lymphedema in her arm. It's not a visible thing. So this is a real gift of a stage. I love stage 0. This means maybe you've had lymph nodes removed, or you had trauma, or you had an infection, and there's been damage to the lymphatic system, but your body can handle it. That's stage 0. Stage 0 is like early stage. I can't visibly see it swelling. You can still wear clothes that are like, ones you can buy off the rack at the store. In all honesty, stage 0 is where most people will get the best results if they start treatment now. If we wait until things get swollen, then it's backpedaling. It's a lot of work. So stage 0, this is my latent stage. This is where we can get a lot of work done because there's not lots of swelling. Stage 1 is called mild lymphedema, but can also be called spontaneously reversible. So you get swelling one day because you were outside gardening. It was such a gorgeous day and you wanted to plant all those tulip bulbs because who doesn't want tulips? So you went and you planted tons and tons, and the next day you wake up and your arm is swollen. Now you're like, this is not comfortable. This is not good. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to call and make an appointment to go see the doctor in a couple of days. But you wake up the next day and it's gone. It was like magic. It was swelling one day and then it was gone. And what happens is that just by allowing yourself to rest or having the limb elevated, what will happen is it will reduce the swelling. Doesn't mean it fixed the whole system. It just means that with a little bit of rest and patience, it was able to recover that fluid. But the more that that happens without any kind of, treatment or without any kind of planning, the more often that stage 1 happens, the fluid comes and goes, comes and goes. Eventually, we become what we call stage 2. Now, this is moderate lymphedema, but we also call this spontaneously irreversible. So stage 1 was a gift as well. You had fluid coming, but then you rested and you slept and it went away. And then all of a sudden, the swelling comes and it doesn't go away. It's now there and it's not reducing. It might minimize a little bit, but it doesn't 100% go away. That tells me that you're now in stage 2. Now, stage 2, the fluid's lasting for longer. So what also is starting to happen is your skin is going to start changing. It's going to start getting some thicker little indentations. If you look at the stage 2 picture with the arm, you can see around the left wrist, that little crease that's starting to happen around the wrist. That's telling me it's getting a little bit thicker. And we're starting to see this, the tissue's trying to hold its own. It's trying to thicken up to hold that fluid for as long as it can. And we might start to notice a little bit of pitting, a little bit of indentations happening, but definitely a lot more uncomfortable. Now, if we don't take care of stage 2 and we don't start to try and be, proactive, prevent it from getting worse, but also start to deal with the situation and start to reduce it, all of a sudden we're now in stage 3. This is advanced stage. This is, sometimes we call it lymphostatic elephantiasis, and that means the limb is now pretty much pushed to its limits, and the swelling can be really hard, pitting, a lot of heat, a lot of discomfort, and we might notice that there's almost like thick ridges. We might notice it looks kind of like blister, and then it starts to leak out through that tissue. So this is, of course, stage 3 is what everybody will find if you go and do a search engine search right now. If you were to go and type in lymphedema, you will probably see pictures of stage 3, but that's not where it starts. If we understand what's going on and we are looking for it, we could start working with people in stage 0 or stage 1, and it might never get to stage 3. But again, that comes down to not only educating the medical facilities and the doctors and the teams, but also being preventative and being aware of it as a community, because there's also not a lot of practitioners that work with the lymphatic system. So it's just a constant cycle of how do we manage it? So to assess the stage of lymphedema, a certified lymphedema therapist like me, we're going to sort of look at the degree of swelling, how good is that tissue, how happy is that tissue, we had infections, cellulitis, inflammation, where are we in all of that? Having said this, I can treat all of those different stages, and we do. It's just going to be more tricks, more time, more money, more energy, the further we get into the stages. So lymphedema therapists, who are those crazy people? So lymphedema therapists generally are either nurses, physios, occupational therapists, massage therapists. In the province of Alberta, if you wanted to work for the public system, you will normally need to be a physio or a nurse. Very rarely do we have occupational therapists here in Alberta who become CLTs. The majority of practitioners who are in private practice, which means they don't work for AHS, you work at a private clinic, you work at home, what have you, the majority of those are massage therapists. So there are standards. When I taught at massage school and when I was a massage therapist, like I said, we got like a half a day on lymphatic techniques. That's not lymphedema therapist. That's let me work with your puffy eyes because you were out drinking last night. That would be a great reason. Or you have, zits that are very swollen, or you have sinus issues. Those are great things. But to be a lymphedema therapist, there's a lot of extra training. There's a lot of skills that are involved, and it's more. So if you think you have lymphedema, or you think somebody has lymphedema, that's where having access to a list, and on the ALA website, we do have a list of the certified lymphedema therapists in Alberta, and I'm pretty sure every province on their websites do as well. So it's been good. Lymphedema treatment, it's like I said, it's not just, a couple little treatments here and there. It's depends on where you are. If you're stage 0, we get to have very nice treatments, lighter sessions. You don't have to do as much because it's all preventative, right? So if somebody has swelling, we have 2 phases. So the first phase is how do we get the fluid out of the limb? Okay, so if we think of somebody who, let's say, has stage 2, the fluid's now in the limb and it's not leaving on its own, we get to spend time together doing lymphatic drainage techniques, which is a very gentle form of massage-ish techniques. And we do hands-on techniques like that. We do compression bandaging. We make sure that you're doing exercises. We have compression that you're wearing. We have to make sure your skin is really healthy. And the intensive phase could be 3 days, could be a week, could be 2 months. I have no idea. If you're in stage 2 and you have really good skin and you're really good at doing your homework and you are invested, it might be 3 weeks. I have had patients who are stage 3 lymphedema, that elephantiasis, and intensive phase took 2.5 months. So everybody's different. So the intensive phase is how do we get the limb as small as we can? How do we get as much fluid out of that limb as possible? Once it's as small as possible, and we know it is because we do all these measurements and we're constantly assessing, once the tissue and everything, the limb is now as small as it can be and it's holding, then we get to go to maintenance phase. And maintenance phase is the rest of your life. I wish there was a different way of saying it, but it's the rest of your life. It's how do we keep your limb stable? We're going to use compression garments. We still do manual therapy. We do skin care. We do exercises. You do self-drainage. Maybe you're doing water exercises. You're using a pneumatic compression pump. There's so many different things. And so maintenance phase is keeping it as small as possible. And at any point in time, if there's an injury or you decide not to wear compression garments or something happens, you might swell back up again. Like I said, this is lifelong. So if you swell back up again, you get to go back into the intensive phase. And I don't know how long that's going to take. Maybe it's a week because you swole a little bit, because who wants to wear compression with that dress to their daughter's wedding? Nobody. So you decided not to wear it and you swole up a little bit. Now we have to go back to the intensive phase, get you going again. Once it's reduced, then we're back in maintenance phase. This is treatment planning for the rest of your life. So like I said, the earlier you can start being preventative, the better. So these are the 4 pieces. We use compression, whether it's short stretch bandages or if it's compression garments. There's manual lymphatic drainage, skin care, exercises, all of those things. So a massage therapist or a physio, someone who did basic lymph training, all they learned is really basic lymphatic drainage techniques. They don't learn all the rest of it. This is why certified lymphedema therapists are important. So the type of compression bandages, if you look at them online, it looks like you went to the dollar store and just got like a tensor bandage. And I'll tell you right now, they are nothing like a tensor bandage. Looks are deceiving. These are very specialized types of compression bandages. They're called short stretch bandages. Their job is to reduce the swelling without causing a tourniquet and damaging the tissues. If you use a regular tensor bandages, something that you got at the dollar store or the pharmacy, that will cause way more damage. So it is very important that the right kind of compression bandages are used. Once we use the compression bandages, then we get to go and play with compression garments, which are so much nicer and better than they've ever been in history. So compression, its job is to keep the fluid out. Its job is to be like brand new skin because your skin can't hold the fluid out. So it prevents further swelling. There's certain types that we can use at nighttime if need be, but normal, regular compression garments aren't designed to be worn at night. So there's lots of things that we need to make sure it's the right kind of garment. It fits you perfectly. It needs to fit you like brand new skin. You can't wear your husband's garments. Your husband should not wear your compression garments. That's a different storyline. But anyways, some benefits, we can sometimes use compression pumps. There's so many tools that can be used to help with lymphatic movement and dealing with lymphedema. So you gotta know who to talk to. So compression garments, they're not as bad as they used to be. I know they're not fun. Nobody really gets excited about wearing compression, but it is the way to maintain fluid reduction. So if you came and told me that you had high blood pressure, I would say, well, what's the medication your doctor gave you? And you would say blood pressure medications. So if you don't take the medication and it sits in the cabinet, it won't do the job that it needs to do. Okay. For lymphedema, the medication is wearing compression. So if we buy compression and we leave it in the drawer and never put it on, it will never work. But it is the reality of managing lymphedema. For the majority of the population, compression garments are the essential. It is what you have to put on to maintain the reduction. Okay. So it is a big piece to it. I wear compression garments. There's different times where it's essential and there's times where you can, have a little bit of leeway, but it is what needs to be worn. And there's so many variations. Some of these are looking at, if somebody had thyroid cancer or any kind of throat or face kind of jaw cancer, maybe they have to wear something around their neck to help maintain the fluid. Maybe it's the entire arm, limb. We have cool things like this that can be worn underneath, compression wraps, or this is nighttime garments. Sometimes they need to be customly created for the individual. Can't emphasize that enough. You cannot just go and buy it online and think that you're a size medium. It doesn't work. So the cost of garments, sometimes it's private healthcare plan. In different provinces, there's different things. Here in Alberta, we have the Alberta AIDS Daily Living. There's service clubs, hospital foundations. There are lots of ways to look at this, and that's one of the things that we have on our website as ALA too, is how can you help cover these kinds of things to make it more affordable and doable. So MLD, or manual lymph drainage, it's a very specialized technique. Again, it's not massage. We don't call it manual lymph massage for a reason. It's not massage. It's a very specialized technique, and it does require very specialized training. So skincare, your skin is your #1 barrier and protection against any kind of infection from outside. So if your skin's not doing a good job, you have a lot of prone for infections. So we keep a very tight eye on skin and look at all the different pieces from your toes all the way to the top of your head. Cellulitis is one of the most common infections. ALA, actually, we just recently created this amazing little cellulitis card that helps give you all these ideas of how to know if you have a cellulitis skin infection, as well as how to share that information with a doctor. But it is not the kind of infection you can wait till tomorrow to go see your GP and hopefully get oral medications. This is, I need to go to the ER. And I need to get normally IV antibiotics immediately because it does spread like wildfire and is very scary. So cellulitis is something we're constantly watching for with lymphedema. So rapid onset of skin redness, swelling, the skin feels really hot, maybe it's tingling. Sometimes there's a reddish rash, sometimes there's not, but tiredness, heaviness, nausea, fever, chills, all of those are really great indications. Having said that, I've seen patients who don't have the common signs, but that redness, that irritation to the skin can definitely good reasons to go and make sure that their limb is protected. So cellulitis can look like a whole bunch of different things. The redness that you see, even that kind of discoloration looks like maybe more bruise-like, but still cellulitis. Some people actually are on antibiotics prophylactically for their entire life because they're so prone to cellulitis infections. So there's a lot of things we teach our cellulitis patient, or sorry, our lymphedema patients about to prevent cellulitis, like cutting cuticles, making sure that they're using the right kind of moisturizers. There's actually a pH that is really important. You want to have a pH of 5, if not 5.5, to make sure that you are preventing bacterial growth on the skin. Sunscreen, you know, making sure you're not injuring your skin with razors instead of electric shavers. Mosquito bites, insect repellent, using those kinds of things to help keep your skin as intact and healthy as possible. So any scratches, any kind of tear in the tissue needs to be cared for immediately. So again, every one of my lymphedema patients carries a little container of the antibiotic cream or ointment. They always have Band-Aids with them, and if they have a cat scratch or an insect bite, that is their main thing they're looking after and taking care of until it goes away. And if it starts to get red, hot, irritated, gets worse, it's an immediate to the ER. There's no games with this one. It's really serious. So anytime that there's a concern, we also say, you know, if you have lymphedema, you have a chance of cellulitis, it's good to even have a prescription for antibiotics. So that way, if you are traveling, you have the ability to help handle it, even just for the short term until you can deal with it properly here. So lots of exercises. It depends on the person and what part of their body is affected, but there's a lot of specialized exercises while wearing compression that need to be done to help keep that limb functional. So we're always wearing compression, and we need to make sure that it is the right exercise. So I give a different exercise if it's a 92-year-old grandmother who likes to play with her cat versus a 42-year-old who's dealing with 3 kids who are at hockey all the time, right? So this is where a lymphedema therapist comes in. So pretty big summary, but it's a lifelong condition. It's something that it can affect anyone. We see infants with lymphedema who are born with it. We see people who don't develop it until their late 80s. Anybody can be affected by lymphedema. It needs to be assessed and diagnosed properly and cared for by a certified lymphedema therapist to help manage it as it goes through the steps of treatment plans, and using compression, lymph drainage, skincare, exercise, all of that. That is the standard treatment of care, and it is available and found in the province as well as across the entire country. You just have to know where to look. So this is the big thing, is as a group, we are here to make sure that everybody has the care that they need so they're not alone. So I'm going to pass it over to Allison because she's got all this awesome information.
So I won't go into detail too much on this because I know we're coming to the end of time, but we will send all these resources to Heather to be shared with everyone who attended today. I will say that our website is a huge source of good information. We have information that you can give directly to your doctor there. We have a list of certified lymphedema therapists, webinars. We have free events all the time that are virtual like this. Yeah, for sure. And also on our website is our contact information. So please, if we do not get to your questions today before you have to go, you can reach out to us at any time. So we have an email and a phone number. I will also put them in the chat here quickly and give them to Heather too.
Perfect. I do have a couple of questions. Actually, there's a few questions here. So if we can roll these together real quick.
Yeah, roll them together. Love it.
Okay, so okay, how do you help your medical team with a diagnosis? So example, if you go to your doctor and they think you're a hypochondriac and you just look at too much Google, Google
Yeah.
Med, is there any way you suggest to maybe make a suggestion without making a suggestion?
You know, and that's the great thing is that on our website, there is, we do have like a brochure that sort of says like, these are the steps and the common, I'm not sure if we have it where it has the common signs and symptoms of lymphedema. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so even just being able to have that saying, look, you know, this is from an actual association and this is what they're saying. I would love to have somebody look at it in more in detail. Even just being able to have that resource to give to the GP is a big deal,
Okay.
right? So again, if you have swelling that's been there for a long time, I'm hoping they're not thinking you're a hypochondriac because it's a physical presentation as well. But I have seen, you know, patients unfortunately have to wait longer than they should, just because it might not be either a typical presentation or the GP has just never heard of it or seen it before.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
any kind of thing you can pull from like any of these resources or from our website.
Or ask us, like if you want
Yeah,
copies of those brochures, paper form to give to your doctors, we send those out free of charge so that you can take those.
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
All right. Quick question. How do you tell the difference between just I've gained a little bit of weight and those are fat dimples as opposed to it's edema?
Yeah. So when we put on weight, so general adipose that we find around the body tends to have a little bit more of dimpling, whereas lymphedema doesn't tend to show up as dimpling. It tends to have more of a smoother kind of appearance. The other thing is that lymphedema normally will not show up on both sides of the body equally.
Okay.
And so if you have one leg that's getting bigger and thicker, that is more of an indication of lymphedema versus fat. Fat should normally be distributed fairly evenly across our body. So it's normally a pretty good way of telling if it's one or the other.
Okay. Certifications on packages to make sure that you're getting authentic compression garments. Is there anything that's on there that we can look for?
On garments, you're looking for like there's the big compression garment companies.
Mhm.
So I don't want to not support smaller local grassroots kind of stuff, but lymphedema compression needs to be medical grade.
Okay.
So getting something off of maybe just some website or some, you know, big shopping site that I'm not going to mention, but if you just go on a big shopping site and just type in compression, there's compression that's designed for an athlete who wants to run and prevent congestion in their legs. It's not the same. So there's big compression companies like Juzo or Medi or LNR, Solaris, like they're the big ones. You want to type in medical compression and you need it to have it measured by a certified garment fitter.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
yeah, you
actually,
can't say medium or large. I'm a size 2 compression class 2 short pantyhose compression garment wearer,
Okay.
right?
and if people want to know a place to start there, the Alberta Aids to Daily Living, which Robin mentioned, they actually have a list of certified garment fitters on their website. We have a link to it on our website, and we
Yeah.
can also provide you with that list if you reach out to us. But so that you have like maybe 5 people in your area that you can go to, and they will tell you, okay, this is the brand that'll work for you. This is the size that we've measured you at, that kind of thing. So that makes it a lot less overwhelming than just typing it into Google.
Yeah. And if you go to
Okay.
any like larger sort of pharmacy places and you call them, you say, I'm looking for somebody who is a certified garment fitter, then they probably, if they have one, they probably have the access to the right compression.
Okay. We've got, I think, about 3 more questions.
Yep.
Um, things you should look for that maybe might be red flags if you're going to somebody who says they know what they're doing, but maybe they don't know that they don't know what they're doing. There's some red flags that people should be aware of. I know that's a hard one to put you in, but
It's really hard. So for a certified lymphedema therapist, generally they will state that they are a certified lymphedema therapist. Very few lymphedema therapists I know work in a spa.
okay.
They generally work in more of a medical style clinic. On our website, there is a list of all the certified lymphedema therapists who have given their information to ALA to share. So that's one thing. But it is unfortunately, it's one of those things that sometimes because they have a little bit of training in school, they feel like they can, but there's so much more to it than just the hands-on. So you want to call and ask for where did they go to become certified,
Okay.
and start doing your research that way.
Okay. Two things. I'm going to give them to you both at once. Dr. Ho's monosizer
Yep.
and the sock depressions or hat depressions on your forehead. So is that something you should look out for? And will Dr. Ho help?
So the Dr. Ho concept, the vibration, so there's the one that's the vibration and there's the tens. So if you're looking at the vibration and so on, there is scientific research that shows it stimulates circulation in general. So it
Okay.
does have an effect on the lymphatic system. I've not seen any research in it regarding lymphedema specifically, but if you were somebody who had tired legs at the end of the day and you're just trying to help move circulation to help with generalized circulation, I've seen good results for that, but I haven't seen any documentation research for lymphedema. And then you're talking about like just like imprints on your head.
Yes, or your socks. Like if you're
Yeah, so socks are going to tell you you're having troubles with moving the fluid up. As long as the indents go down, it's not an absolute red flag, but it's telling you that you're having a hard time moving fluid against even just the minor compression from your socks.
Mhm.
From your hat and so on, it's the same idea. I would only be concerned if you have other reasons for having lymphedema as well. So if you're having this big band that does not go away on your head and you've had thyroid cancer and radiation, then we should talk. But if
Okay.
it's just because that's your hat and that's all you wear, then maybe you need a bigger hat. I don't know. But
It's windy sometimes.
it shouldn't freak you out to a point saying, "Oh crap, I have lymphedema." There's other pieces in there, but
Okay.
yeah,
Relationship between inflammation and lymphedema I know that's a big, broad topic
that's a big
on
topic.
there. Um, are they related? And is that maybe a different conversation later on?
It's a big conversation. There is very specifically, there is research talking about genetic predisposition to inflammation and causing lymphedema to be worse.
Okay.
With lymphedema, you do have microcirculatory inflammatory processes, so we can go really nitty gritty on it. But definitely, if somebody has lymphedema and then they have any kind of inflammatory process, now your system has to try and move that as well. So
Okay.
you definitely want to try and manage any kind of inflammatory or immune responses if you can, and that should help manage some of the lymphedema symptoms, but it's a big topic.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I love
we'll
it.
do that one later.
Another time.
That's another
Yeah.
time.
Another afternoon.
Um, Things you can do if you think you might be in the early stages. Is it yoga? Is it harder exercise? Is it more cardio? What are some of the things that you can do to keep yourself in the I don't have issues kind of
Right.
phase?
I would highly recommend if you do think that you have early stages or lymphedema that you try and have it assessed and
Okay.
diagnosed, because it might not be, and then you're worrying about a whole bunch of stuff that's not to be. If we look at just like general movement in general, that's a great thing, trying to reduce, heat during big exercises, that's a huge thing. But exercise is very individualized as well. So it depends on where the lymphedema is showing up. It depends on which part of your body is being affected, will depend on what activity is accurate. So if it is
Okay.
something you're concerned about, it is really important to have it assessed and to work with a CLT or a lymphedema therapist, because they can
Okay.
customize it to make it perfect or better for your body.
Okay, last question. If you're swollen from lymphedema and treatment has started and the swelling goes down, does it cause you to pee more?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually my favorite part. It's actually one of the ways you can tell it works. So when we are doing lymphatic work, we are stimulating your lymph system to move that fluid just like it should normally. Like I don't go in with a needle to pull the fluid out. That would be weird. But we stimulate your lymph system to work better, which means we're helping encourage that fluid to get through your lymph nodes, to get put into your bloodstream, which then the number one way to get that waste products out is to pee. So most patients, when the lymphatic drainage is working and the treatment plan is working, they will mention and comment about how much more they're urinating and how more frequently and the volume. And that is
Okay,
the number one way to get that fluid out is to pee it out.
perfect. This is
Yeah.
good. It's a happy thing.
It's a
Okay, so
happy thing. It's a
it's a
good
happy
thing.
thing. I want to thank